Hi, I'm Jason Cash from Cash Farms Pure Maple Syrup, and I'm on the farm today with Layman's to show you how to identify your maple trees for making maple syrup. Now, the easiest way to identify a maple tree is by the leaf. And obviously this time of the year, there's not a lot of leaves on the trees, but what I always recommend is take a walk through your woods in the fall. And as you're enjoying the beauty of nature, look for those trees with the yellow-orange leaves. Now, not all maple trees have yellow-orange leaves, but sugar maples in particular, which is the tree we're most interested in, does have a yellow-orange leaf. And when you get a little closer to that tree, you want a leaf that looks like this. A sugar maple leaf will have 3 to 5 lobes, and on each one of those lobes, they'll have these little cutouts, which are called sinuses. Now, the important thing to identify that this is a sugar maple tree is that if you look at each one of these sinuses, they are U-shaped. If you have a tree that has 3 to 5 lobes on it, but the sinuses are V-shaped, that's probably a silver maple or a red maple or something else. So if you have a tree that is yellow-orange in the fall, has 3 to 5 lobes, each of those lobes has U-shaped sinuses, then it's a pretty good chance that you have a sugar maple tree. And once you've identified it, I always recommend that you mark your trees. And we mark our trees pretty easily with a can of latex indoor house paint. You want to avoid aerosol. We just take a paintbrush and a can of paint and we make a nice little stripe on the tree. So anytime you come to Cash Farms and you're looking for our sugar maples, look for those trees with the white stripes. Now, obviously, if you missed fall and you still want to tap some trees to make maple syrup, there is one other way to tell when you have a maple tree, and that is to look for what's called opposite branching. Now, in this part of the United States, there's only 3 trees that have opposite branching, and that would be maple, ash, and dogwood, or best remembered with the mnemonic MAD. Now, on our farm, it gets even easier than that because dogwood trees are ornamental trees. We put them in our front yards. They have beautiful flowers, but they don't grow back here in the woods. And ash trees, about 5 or 6 years ago, a little bug came through called an emerald ash borer and actually killed all of our ash trees here on the farm. So we don't have any of those. So any tree on our farm that has our opposite branching like this is by default a maple tree. And when you look at the buds on that maple tree, you want a bud that is a dark brown color and has a pointy tip. So those are a couple of ways that you can identify your sugar maple trees for tapping to make maple syrup. Now, once we've identified our maple trees, the next thing we need to do is to make sure that they're big enough for us to tap. And a maple tree has to be at least 10 inches in diameter at breast height. We call it DBA, diameter at breast height, in order for us to put 1 tap in it. A tree has to be at least 18 inches in diameter for us to put 2 taps into it, but we should never put more than 2 taps in any of our maple trees because we want them to stay strong and healthy for a really long time. So once we've found the maple tree that we'd like to tap, we're going to find an area on the tree where we can place our tap where it's convenient so that it's not adjacent to a tap from a previous year. And then we're going to take our drill with a 7/16 inch bit because we have a 7/16 inch spile that we're going to use. And if you notice, I've put a little tape around my bit. And that's because when you drill your hole into the tree, you only want to drill it about 1.5 to 2 inches deep and at a slight upward angle, usually about 10 degrees. And the red tape helps me know not to drill into the tree too far. So the 2 most common sizes of spiles for your tree are a 7/16, which is more of a traditional size, and the newer 5/16. The 5/16 requires a slightly smaller hole and is generally thought to be a little healthier for the tree because the tree will heal a little bit faster. Once you've drilled your hole into the tree, you're going to insert your spile with the shark fin up, and then you're going to do what I call a tap-tap-tunk. Now, you're not trying to drive the spile into the tree like a nail, you're just trying to seat the spile. You're trying to seal the hole up. So you're going to gently tap on the spile, and you'll notice that as you tap, the sound will change at one point. And once you get that tonk sound, that solid sound, you know that spile is in far enough and you don't have to tap it any harder. And then once you have your spile firmly in the tree, you're going to take your assembled sap sack. And if you notice, our sap sack has this little hole in the back, and the hole goes right over the spile, and the shark fin is what holds it in place. So as your sap drips out of the tree, it's going to collect in your bag. Now that you have your bag hung on the tree, You got to wait for one of those cold nights followed by a warm day that's going to make that sap flow. And once you have one of those nights where you have a fluctuation above and below freezing, the sap's going to collect in your bag and you can come out and collect it to make maple syrup. So what a lot of people don't realize is that sap is perishable. So when you do have one of those nights below freezing followed by a warm day, you can't just leave that sap in the bag until you're ready to process it. You pretty much have to collect it every time one of you have one of those fluctuations. And each tree that you tap will produce between 1 and 1.5 gallons of sap every day that you have one of those fluctuations in temperature. So when you tap your trees for maple syrup, be ready to collect some sap and process it into maple syrup. So the maple season will last about 6 to 8 weeks, but it is all weather dependent. And at the end of the season, you're gonna come out into the woods, you're gonna take down your bag, and the bag is only used for one season. So after the end of the season, you can take it to your local recycling center and recycle it just like you would your grocery store bags. But the metal holder can be used again and again for many years to come. Then you're gonna remove the spile from the tree so that the tree can properly heal. And then you're gonna wash and sterilize that spile. And again, it can be used for many years to come. But removing the spile from the tree will allow that tree to start to heal. And if you look closely at our tree right here, you can see lots of places where we had taps in previous years, and they're healing up quite nicely, and the tree is going to be just fine. So now we're going to hang a bucket on one of our maple trees, and to hang a bucket, we're going to use this stainless steel rolled spile. And if you see, it has a hook on the bottom, so you know it's for a bucket. And the other thing I want to point out is it has this nice little hole right here that we'll explain in a little bit. Now, we've already drilled our hole in the tree, and we have our spile in, and we're going to use a spile driver to seat the spile. Now with a rolled spile, because they are thin metal, we don't want to pound directly on the spile itself, so you would take your spile driver and we insert it into the spile, and that gives us a nice firm surface that we can then tap, tap, tonk on. And then once your spile is in the tree, you can take your bucket, you can hang it right from the hook on the bottom of the spile. And if you notice, our lid has this cool little metal pin, and that's where the hole comes in the spile. When you pull out the pin, you insert it through the hole in your spile, and that's what actually holds your lid on the tree. So when you need to come and empty your bucket, all you have to do is lift up the lid, lean it against the tree, and you can easily take your bucket off the hook and empty it, and then put it back on. So here we have a plastic bucket and spile. And just like our metal bucket, we have a nice hole in the back, which hangs off of the hook on our spile. And then we have our plastic lid with the pin, and that pin will go through the hole in our spile, and that's what holds the lid on the bucket. And when you need to go empty it, all you have to do is lift your lid up, take off your bucket to empty it, and you can put it right back on. Thanks for watching this presentation. If we've piqued your interest in making your own maple syrup, make sure you visit Lehman's in Kidron, Ohio, or Lehmans.com for all your maple syrup equipment and supplies. Thanks for watching. Happy sugaring. Let us help you take the next step on your journey to a simpler life.